Well, I'm so glad to be with you. Happy holidays to you. Happy Sabbath to you. I was just the other day, or I guess we were, I wasn't the only one who had Thanksgiving. We just had Thanksgiving all together. And something that comes along with Thanksgiving, I don't know if this is something that you and your family do or participate in, but is Black Friday. And if you guys got some Black Friday deals, I got a couple deals. And I was meeting with some friends around Black Friday. Maybe it was kind of the night before, Thanksgiving Eve. And we were talking, and one of them shared this Black Friday story that I have to share with you. He talked about how he once was in Walmart on Black Friday, and he talked about, and this was like some years ago, apparently Walmart used to do this thing where on Black Friday, if you're in the building, over the loudspeaker, they would announce, attention, on aisle 34, there are now DVDs for 60 cents. Please, first come, first serve. Good luck. It feels like the Hunger Games. Good luck. The odds it be ever in your favor. And so he described it like this. This happened. He was there on Black Friday at this Walmart. And all of a sudden, the announcement came over. Attention, there are mag lights on aisle 12. They are like, I don't know how much mag lights are normally, but he's like, they're like, I don't know, $7.99 or something for these like giant like mag lights, these like really nice flashlights. And so he's like, well, let me go check it out. Turns out it's only an aisle away, so he steps over an aisle, and all of a sudden he hears it. The mad dash of the Walmart masses coming for these mag lights. And all of a sudden, these people, they crowd around this, it's like this crate of mag lights that's been put out. And these, people are just like yanking and grabbing and taking not one or two, but like 3 or 4. They're like trying to stock up, and maybe they're going to sell them on eBay later or something. They're all just stocking up. Finally, he just, while all the chaos is going on, he decides to, take a step back. He's like, well, I don't know if I really need a mag light that bad. So he takes a step back and just kind of watches the chaos unfold. And as it dwindles down to just a few, it turns out that there are only 2 people left, a man and a woman, and there's one mag light left. And they have it between them, and they're doing like a tug-of-war number where they're pulling back and forth, and they're like yelling at each other like, this is my mag light. No, this is mine. They're just yelling at each other back and forth, super angry, super heated, and finally, the woman takes her fist and she punches the man's arm so that he can't hold on to the mag light anymore. And he's like, and he lets go, and she's like, ha, and runs away. And the way that he told the story, I don't know if this is true or not. Sometimes as storytellers, I'm just going to break it to you. Sometimes we use hyperbole and sort of just kind of spice the story up a little bit. So I don't know if this is spice or true, but he said, as soon as she runs away and the man is just left there and he kind of walks away meandering, he realizes music was playing over the loudspeaker, the Walmart speaker. Guess what song it was playing? Silent Night. Holy. Silent Night had been playing while these people were essentially fighting each other for a mag light. A bit of a silly story, but it reveals to us, I think, kind of the incongruence we feel between the Christmas story and really any kind of conflict, but especially the kind of conflict that ends in violence. We feel this dissonance. The two don't seem to go together. And it's funny how something as simple as the song Silent Night has the power to unmask us like this, to judge us even. Without even judging, by just existing, we feel the dissonance. If you weren't with us last week, we are spending a few weeks looking at the Christmas story through the lens of Luke chapter 2, verse 14. This verse, let's read it together. Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace among those with whom he is pleased. And today, I want to focus on this part, on earth peace. Last week we spoke about the glory of God, how God gets glory simply by being himself, by being the God who saves. But this week, I want to zero in on peace. So let us journey together for the next few minutes here. I think peace is one of those kind of churchy words that we use a lot in church, right? It's like faith, hope, peace, right? very churchy, kind of religious words. We say it a lot around Christmas time, so much so that I think sometimes it loses its meaning a little bit. Sometimes you can use a word so much. You ever experience that? A word is used so much, it kind of loses its context. We see it on like wrapping paper, on social media, TV, ads, all the time. Just peace on earth. It becomes a slogan, something from which to sell things by. But it ends up being a little removed from its original biblical context. And don't get me wrong, peace, it's a beautiful thing, absolutely central to the Christmas story. But sometimes I think what happens when a word like this is removed from the biblical story, the richness of the context, it becomes so common and casual, it enables us to really forget where it comes from. I think we cannot forget that the birth of Jesus comes with peace, announcement of joy, yes, but also blood. In Matthew 2, verse 16, Matthew, he tells us in his gospel that Herod, when he saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, became furious. And he sent and killed all the male children in Bethlehem and in all that region who were 2 years old or under, according to the time that he had ascertained from the wise men. So from Matthew's account, we learned the Christmas story begins not with one scene of angels, celebration, shepherds, nativity, but actually with two scenes. It's almost like, those movies where like the opening scene, it'll show, like the good guys, what they're doing, but then it'll show another scene. It'll show the villains. And it shows kind of like what's going on with them, right? I think Marvel does this well, like especially with Thanos, they'll show like what Thanos is up to, what Thanos is doing. Oh man, what is the villain doing? Almost as if to like hook us into what's going on with the bad guy here. And I think that's why Thanos is such a good villain in the Marvel movies, because we end up identifying with him. We end up understanding why he's doing what he's doing. This scene is similar to that. We see our hero in the story, but then we see the villain, King Herod. A group of mysterious scholars from another country arrive at his palace and tell him, hey, a king is about to be born in Bethlehem. And Herod, rather than ordering a royal welcome, right, this is Messiah who the whole nation has been waiting for hundreds of years, rather than welcoming with open arms for laying down the red carpet, he orders death. He orders the murder of his own children, his own country, his own people, babies. All in the hope of protecting his own power. And we're surprised, but we're not really surprised, right, when we read the story. It's not really a surprise to us, truly. It's a very human story, told time and time again, right? Herod is operating under a very human principle, I think. This is the principle that peace is only obtainable through violence. And it seems to, I think, expose this sort of human blueprint, so to speak, this strategy that we have come to, peace through violence. It sums up the way of our world. As humans, we long for peace, but we don't quite know how to get there without hurting each other, it seems. We seem to get lost in creating it. There seems to be no end to the lengths that we will go to create peace that end up harming one another. Oh, there are bright spots in history, right? We have, we could probably list characters, right, historical figures that they seem to get it right, and we can look at them, we can point at them and say, oh, wow, look, they're doing it differently. But overwhelmingly, history tells us that peace through violence is our most common strategy, what we fall back on almost every time. The best answer we have to the question, how do we have peace in the world? And time again, the human answer is, well, blood, the sword, violence, death. Look no further than the parents of Jesus themselves. They make their way to Bethlehem during the reign of Emperor Caesar Augustus, Emperor of Rome. Now, Augustus is significant to us, to our story, because he was the first emperor in a time period of Rome called the Pax Romana. It's a time period of around 200 years of unprecedented peace in the Roman Empire. And it's all new to them because it was a time where the warfare was down. There were still some conflicts going on, but the amount of war was down, and economic prosperity was booming. So this is the moment in history where Jesus enters the story. After years of constant conflict, Rome, the greatest empire the world has ever seen, is finally at peace. But the question is, how? How does this peace come about? To find the answer, we turn to Roman historian Adrian Goldsworthy. He says, the security of Rome's frontiers was based on dominating her neighbors, very much in keeping with the belief that peace came from Roman victory. And so Rome finds peace, but even Rome, the empire that considered itself civilized in a world of barbarians, it gets there not with words or diplomacy, democracy, but by utterly dominating its opposition by blood and fire and death and conquest. So it's easy to villainize Rome. So we can't be too hasty. It's easy to villainize Rome, but history is actually brimming with the same story over and over again. The Old Testament tells us of a time filled with warring gods, of tribal conquests, of brutal deeds. But it doesn't end there. We have Babylon, Assyria, Medo-Persia, Greece, all of it. Peace by blood, peace by domination. And then we have famous characters throughout history, great warriors, those who were said to create empires: Gilgamesh, Sargon, Genghis Khan, Alexander the Great, Charlemagne. All of them, peace by blood, the same, the sword. And then we arrive at the modern era. The writers of the Enlightenment, they painted a bright future full of reason and science and progress. And yet the 20th century saw more death than the whole history of the world previous combined. Over 160 million people, it's estimated, died in the 20th century. Both the victims of religion and anti-religion alike. No one is safe. No one is blameless. No one is innocent. Peace by blood everywhere. So it seems that no matter which direction in history we look, no matter how noble the empire, peace is always made with blood. It's the best we have. We don't know any other way, it seems. Or if we do, we can't achieve it. Every attempt seems to fail. It brings to mind a quote from one of my favorite authors, Miroslav Volf. He writes, "How can truth and justice be anything but deception and oppression to those who have been brought to insight by violence? Will they not reach for the sword themselves to establish their own truth and their justice? The sword intended to root out violence ends up fostering it. We are caught in a vicious cycle." And when he says that, vicious cycle, what he's talking about is this cycle of retaliation, of revenge, right? This cycle of, oh, that country did this to us, so we're going to do the same to them. Oh, remember when they attacked our forefathers 100 years ago? Well, now it's our turn. Now we have the power. Oh, remember when they oppressed us? Now it's our turn to oppress them. Remember when they defeated us? When they killed our children, our mothers? Well, we're going to do the same to them. An eye for an eye. We seem to be trapped in this cycle, this never-ending hamster wheel of vengeance and death, violence. And so the question that breaks out of history that I would submit to you is, what will break the cycle? What will save us from ourselves? Because eventually, it's like a stone rolling down a hill. I'm picturing, you guys ever seen any of those cartoons with the little stick man? He's running down the hill and there's the big boulder that's chasing. That's kind of how I imagine the cycle of violence comes for us. And in the end, it threatens to be our downfall. We inevitably will end up destroying ourselves if left to our own devices. So what will break the cycle? How will we be free? The prophet Isaiah casts a vision of what freedom from the cycle might look like. We see it in chapter 2, verse 4. He says, "They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore." Beautiful, beautiful image of what peace could look like No longer are swords used for death, but beaten into tools for creating life, for growing. I love how Rabbi Abraham Heschel puts it in his book, The Prophets, when he writes, "When the prophets appeared, they proclaimed that might is not supreme, that the sword is an abomination, that violence is obscene. The sword," they said, "shall be destroyed." It's beautiful, a beautiful image of a potential future where the sword is destroyed, where we no longer have to fear conquest, blood, retaliation, revenge. And sometimes I think these images and ideas, we're looking through history, sometimes I think they're really, really big, but we can zoom in right on a micro level as well. We see it in our own relationships, right? Retaliation, revenge. You did this to me, so I'll do this to you. You hurt me, so I want to hurt you. We see it in our families, our marriages, workplaces. Man, I'm going to get what's mine. I'm going to get revenge because you did this to me and I deserve this. I deserve justice. But really, when we say justice, we don't mean justice. We mean revenge. And so this is the question that I think cries out to us. The second question, right? The first one is, what will save us? How is the cycle broken? But the prophets, they paint an image of a future where the sword is no longer used for death, but for life. And I guess the question that comes to mind then is how? How do we get there? How can we get to this magical, mysterious place where the sword is no longer the ruling force in the world? How do we get there? What do we do? Who will save? To find the answer, we turn back to Isaiah once more, to a verse perhaps many of you have read before, Isaiah 53. A little later in the book, the prophet says, "But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace. And with his wounds we are healed." Did you hear it? The announcement of peace. The impossible mystical vision for the future that the prophets paint. A baby will come and he will be crushed, and that will give us peace. A man will come, a hero, a main character, and through his suffering, we receive peace. It seems absurd. It seems insane. And yet this is the picture the prophets paint for us. The mystery that Christmas proclaims. That the baby who comes, he comes to bring peace. But he's going to do it with his death. How does this work? To answer, we turn back to Wolf. He says, by suffering violence as an innocent victim, he took upon himself the aggression of the persecutors. He broke the vicious cycle of violence by absorbing it, by taking it upon himself. So what does this mean? What does peace on earth look like? How did we get there? How do we get it? How does it come to us? I think the truth is a revelation of something deeply tragic and beautiful all at the same time. In that a God who created the world and desperately longs for it to be whole again. That's what the word peace means. It's wholeness. A God who created the world decides to enter into the cycle of violence, to break the cycle, and rather than using the methods that we come up with, swords and blood and death, he says, no, I'm going to suffer. I'm going to suffer unto death. I'm going to take it all upon myself. And so he does on that faithful day. after growing up over 30 years, becoming a child and then a man and then doing ministry and then hanging on a tree, he stretches his arms out and says, the cycle ends here. It ends with me. It's finished. It's done. It ends. It stops right here. The violence ends. This is where the blood ends. I can take it. I can bear it all. He did this so that we could have peace. For unto us a child is born, and unto us a son is given. The government will be upon his shoulders, and his name shall be Wonderful Counselor, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Amen.